to your man War Machine, right? And that's not even honestly like due to real events that happened in the news attached to the name War Machine. For obvious reasons, we shouldn't even be using that name. But for anybody who's not sure as to why, all I'm gonna say is type it in on a Google search. That's all I'm gonna say.
Right, 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 man.
That's all. And I'm not laughing. And for the record, I am I would never I would never make light of domestic violence. I would never make light of abuse towards women. That is not the reason why we were laughing at that prior comment, for the record. Just so that we're clear on all of our bases there. But digress, right?
Right, right.
So
Oh man, go ahead,
the character of Colonel James
Colonel.
Rhodes, full bird Colonel in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, debuting in Iron Man 2008, played by an actor by the name of Terrence Howard, which a lot of people do not remember.
No, they do not.
For the record, the original character of Colonel James Rhodes was Terrence Howard.
Who was paid more than Robert Downey Jr. in the first Iron Man film?
Yes, documented, well documented, the highest paid actor in that entire movie, only for the express purpose of looking at the alternate armor and saying, "What he say? Next time, baby."
Next time, baby. Oh yeah. Yep.
To be recasted, to be recasted for Don Cheadle, who was also an amazing actor. You will never hear any slander towards Don Cheadle coming from me at all.
Yeah, phenomenal actor. And I mean, we can go on further with it. That I think was not really of a miscast, but not much of a development in terms of Colonel Rhodes, Rhodey, and his War Machine character.
Overall, throughout this entire arc of we'll call it the Infinity Saga of
Okay.
this last 10 years within Marvel Cinematic Universe. What is your what is your estimation? What do you feel that character brought to the table?
For War Machine, I feel like his role in the whole Infinity War saga has basically been to, I gotta be honest, to play second fiddle to Iron Man, which is an easy thing to do because Robert Downey Jr. owns the role. But to the point where he's basically really like a sidekick
Okay.
to Iron Man. So War Machine doesn't really get much of a spotlight. War Machine doesn't really get much highlights in terms of respect and in terms of character development. So you're first introduced to Colonel Rhodes, Rhodey in the War Machine suit in Iron Man 2. And the first thing you realize is that his suit is definitely inferior to the original to Tony's suit and Tony's technology, right?
Inferior.
Inferior, yes. He has
Huh.
that fake little missile thing or whatever. At the end, he has like, oh, I got the big gun, and it turns out to be nothing. And then at the end, I think doesn't he tell Rhodes to bend down or whatever so that he can do his laser beam move? Well, it definitely wasn't the best first impression of War Machine compared to Iron Man, in the sense that Iron Man still was the top dog, still had the top highlights and better technology, and kicked more ass than War Machine in comparison for his debut of being in the full suit. Then you have Iron Man 3, who wasn't even in the Avengers film, first Avengers film. Then you have Iron Man 3, where he takes on the Iron Patriot mantle, but yet still has to get rescued as Iron Patriot. He tries to take over the role, but it's not really successful in the sense that he's doing his thing to the side of Tony Stark, but it's very minuscule in comparison to what Tony's doing. So by the end of that film, when Tony Stark destroys his machines and his suits in the basement, whatever, there's no real feeling like, well, what's War Machine gonna do? What's Rhodey gonna do? No one really cares. He makes a little cameo in Age of Ultron. He comes with the support with Shield and the last Shield helicarrier. That is honestly one of his very few highlights in the whole Infinity War saga. The next time we see him, he gets paralyzed from the waist down in Civil War by Iron Man shooting his own dude
My
down.
bad. It was Vision. It was Vision.
Vision,
Okay.
right? My bad.
Because
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, he told Vision to shoot down Falcon. Falcon dodged the beam,
right.
and then the beam took him down
Yeah,
and paralyzed him.
my bad. My bad. Right. Vision shot War Machine accidentally. War Machine got paralyzed from the waist down. That was the big kind of. It wasn't a death, but that was pretty much the big loss of the film. Where none of the Avengers got killed, but War Machine was paralyzed.
He got
Enough.
wounded.
He got wounded, and in all honesty, no one really cared but Tony Stark. So, that was that. And then the next time we see War Machine, I believe, is in Infinity War, and he gets a few highlights of making some explosions or whatever, but he doesn't get dusted. He goes on an end game. He does the mission to get the stone with Nebula.
Yeah.
That mission wasn't really too impressive by itself anyway. He basically makes a little bit of a friendship with Falcon. Tony Stark dies, and there's no sense of what's Rhodey gonna do. Is Rhodey gonna take over Iron Man? There's more implications that Spider-Man is gonna take over that role than Rhodey. And in comparison to other characters who came on the scene, I would have to say War Machine is one of those characters that was put on the back burner, was put in the background a little bit more so than others, simply because I think in comparison to Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr., it's such a contrast of importance. And could Marvel have written that better? Probably, but in all honesty, he's not really worth the attention, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. He it's weird because he should have in the comics he does replace Iron Man for a while. Tony Stark is a drunk, and War Machine, Colonel Rhodes takes over the Iron Man mantle. We never get a sense that Rhodey could do that in the MCU. We never get a sense that he has a potential. We never get a sense that he's almost just barely in the league of the Avengers, in my opinion. But go on, man.
All right. So what I'm gonna say is that all right. Well, before I even say anything, let me ask you this: do you think that the character being recasted from Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle, do you feel like that made any difference on the portrayal or the perception of the character? Because I don't feel as though there was any real downgrade from casting Don Cheadle after casting Terrence Howard. How you feel?
I think, well, Don Cheadle is a much better actor than Terrence Howard and has a lot more of a catalog than him. In comparison, it's just I almost feel like I almost feel like they had more of a connection. Robert Downey Jr. and Terrence Howard.
They had. Oh wow. Okay.
I think from the first movie, maybe because the first movie was so good, might have hidden that. But I feel like RDJ and Terrence Howard has a little bit more of a chemistry between the two of them as friends. Well, I feel like Don Cheadle feels like he's almost like
in competition.
In competition, but kind of like the friend that you kind of hang out with, but you're cooler and better than him, but you hang out with him anyway because you're doing one for the team. Like, hey man, I'm hanging out with you, but kind of as a favor rather than a genuine friend kind of deal.
Okay.
That's the
So
kind of chemistry I got between the two of them.
okay. So to me, it's kind of like this, right? I do think that I think Don Cheadle brought a different element to the character. I don't see a lot of comedic range in Terrence Howard. I view Terrence Howard as being more of a serious type of actor. It's hard for me to envision Terrence Howard pulling off some more of the lighthearted parts of the character that Don Cheadle was able to pull off.
Okay. All right. Fair
That's
enough.
my opinion on that. I just have a hard time seeing him doing that because I'm used to seeing Terrence Howard portraying a certain type of character, right?
Right.
Because Don Cheadle is a little bit more because Don Cheadle has a little bit more range as an actor than what I would say Terrence Howard does, right? And that's no
Hmm.
slight on Terrence Howard because I've seen him in some great roles. But Don Cheadle as an actor comes off as being a little bit more rangy in that the parts where you were meant to laugh at some of the lines that he had hit in a way to where the timing was never off, right?
Hmm.
Terrence Howard trying to make me laugh would always feel like it's out of place, even in parts where I'm meant to laugh. The funniest parts of any performance you get from Terrence Howard are as a result of how serious he's actually being. And you're laughing at how serious he is. You see what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yeah. True that. True that.
So that's what I meant when I said there wasn't much of a drop off, but I'm getting sidetracked. Now, the character of James Rhodes, I think, was meant to be positioned as a sidekick. There was never any other intention. There was no other role for him to perform or portray aside from being Tony Stark's cool friend that happens to be a colonel in the United States Air Force. That's the way I feel about that. Don Cheadle, he carried that out perfectly to where I wasn't too bothered by it because he put 100% into it and you could tell he was having fun with what it was that he was doing. But the character was definitely positioned to be kind of mid tier. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
man.
saying?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. You're
yeah,
right.
he was most definitely mid tier, and there was never a moment. You never got that moment of him kind of breaking out and establishing himself as anything other than Tony Stark's friend that happens to know how to control one of these suits that he built.
Definitely,
Whereas,
dude. I think you nailed it. Go ahead.
yeah, whereas the character of Sam Wilson, the character of Falcon, from day one was already established as a guy who was competent and knew how to operate on his own. He brought something to the table that supplemented and enhanced what Captain America was able to do. You never got that feeling out of the character of War Machine because he was there off of the strength of something that somebody else built. Even though he knew how to operate it, even though like later on they kind of established as far as the visuals that okay, this Iron Man suit is a little bit heavier. It has more guns. It's a little bit more lethal. There's no laser beams or any of that. This is all bullets and rockets, right? But
Right.
at the same time, you never got the feeling that this was something that the character could have done on his own. The character of Falcon was standing on his own and brought something to the table that Captain America appreciated and felt was important, right?
Right. Right.
Who's to say that somebody else couldn't have gotten into the War Machine suit and done the same thing that James Rhodes had did within the context of these movies?
Nah, that's a fair point.
And not on
Yeah.
my bad. Not only that, but like there was never an apology Nobody apologized to him after he got paralyzed. That's very important. That is very, very, very important. Nobody apologized to the character after that happened to him. The only one who felt bad was Sam Wilson and Tony Stark. Cap didn't apologize. Black Widow didn't apologize. Vision
Damn.
didn't apologize. None of them actually apologized to this potentially life-threatening injury that he sustained as a part of some shit that really didn't even have nothing to do with him.
Damn. Oh man, you're right on that. No one did. Yeah.
Nobody apologized.
It was just Sam and Iron Man. Shit.
You see what I'm saying? And the reason why I think Sam kind of sympathized is because that was his fellow brother in arms. That was his fellow veteran, his fellow airman who ended up being injured as a result of some bullshit, right? But Black Widow basically told Tony Stark it was his fault that it happened to him in Civil War.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
There was never a handshake between Captain America and War Machine where it was like, hey, you know what? Hey, I'm sorry that this happened to you. That never happened. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's just kind of sad, bro.
No, like, it is. It's very sad. Like, that never happened. So, you know, I commend Don Cheadle for holding it down and putting everything into the character that he did. But, like, let's not pretend that the character he was a mid-carder, bro. Like, he was a mid-carder. I mean, Nebula was a mid-carder. You know what I'm saying? Drax was a mid-carder. Rocket Raccoon was a mid-carder. Loki was an upper mid-carder. But none of them had something like that happen to them where their character had a serious change. The only one that was in physical therapy with Colonel James Rhodes was Tony Stark, even though he wasn't even responsible for him getting injured like that.
Damn. Yeah, you're right about that, man. And I mean, yeah, you're right. He was written as a mid-carder. People already looking at Spider-Man to be a replacement of Tony Stark. People already were speculating that Shuri was going to be a replacement for Tony Stark because she's good with technology. And hell, people wanted Riri Williams, who's a new character, as Ironheart, to take over the role as Iron Man. There was no one clamoring for, I wish War Machine or Colonel Rhodes to take over for Tony. Nobody wanted that. And that was done intentionally because he was never built up to be that kind of a caliber player. Yeah.
That was by design. Yeah, I agree with that. You're not going to get a War Machine series on Disney Plus or a War Machine solo movie to fill in any blanks. But at the same time, though, that character has never been meant to fill that void, I think. And I mean, Robert Downey Jr. brought so much credibility to the role of Iron Man where that wouldn't have been anything plausible, right? Sam Wilson being Captain America and a spinoff with Bucky Barnes as a sidekick, none of that seems too far out of order because we know that character can stand on his own. So, you know what I mean?
True that. Go ahead, man.
No. My last thing that I was gonna say is just like, you know, when you see him and Tony Stark together with an iron glove on, trying to lift up Thor's hammer, and Tony Stark being like, "Hey, are you here to help or not?" You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Sam was not summoned to help Cap that way in any shape or form. Right.
Not at all. And not only that, but like, okay, another example. There's a scene in Age of Ultron where Colonel James Rhodes, which we're gonna keep referring to him as, where he's he's telling the Avengers a story. He's telling them a combat story. He's telling them a story about something that happens while he's downrange, and they're not impressed by it, right?
Right.
So he's like, damn, okay, I guess that doesn't mean anything to y'all. And then he's in a circle of civilians that don't know anything about that. He tells them the same story, and they laugh at the punchline to his joke, and he kind of looks like, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right.
He kind of gives himself that nod of self-assurance, like, you know what? Yeah, I am the man. Like, motherfucker, yes, you are the man. You're a full-bird colonel in the United States Air Force. You know what I'm saying? Yes, you are the man. You know what I'm saying? You was the man before you stepped into this armor that somebody else made. But because of the other characters who are around him, the perception is that he wasn't all of that, right? But
True.
I think some more respect should have been put on his name. Colonel James Rhodes is an unfortunate casualty of some of these things that were going on. And like you were saying, there was no closure established between him losing his friend Tony Stark. There was no closure. I didn't see that.
Right. There was none, which was kind of jarring. It was like, damn, like, like you expected it would have some kind of oomph with the connection that they had and the friendship that they had, but it's just one of those cases where he was built to be a mid card. He could have had some more respect on his name. A lot of characters were thrown in the mix during that time. And I mean, it's respectable. You have Colonel James Rhodes was not an ordinary person, but he was basically your service member, hanging in there with gods, goddesses, magicians, multi-billionaire geniuses, and whatever else they had in there, aliens. It was just your normal officer with some tech and some wit and some guts to keep in there with the Avengers and to protect the Earth. So, in the end, he should have got a little bit more respect on his name, but it is what it is, and I'm not even sure we'll even really be seeing him much in the future of the
No,
MCU.
you won't. You
You
won't.
know?
I mean, no.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised. Nah, I doubt it. I mean, it could happen, but I even if it did happen, I don't see it being any. I don't see it being of any significance because you only seen War Machine when you seen Tony Stark. He
Right.
was, in a sense, he was the perfect sidekick, even though he deserved more than being a sidekick.
Exactly. And I know the comic heads might be a little bit more upset because he's a little bit more in the comics to hold his own. But
Oh
when
yeah,
you
yeah.
have Robert Downey Jr., you have a cast like that, and you're intermingled with the power scaling of these kind of characters. It's just turned out the way it was. Like you said, I will be surprised if he does come. They could easily write him off saying like, "Yo, he's done with it." Like after you save the world like that, like come on now, you've been to space, you've seen aliens, you fought a mad titan with infinity stones. What more can like
Right. You can
retired, man.
retire. You
His
can
pension
retire.
is good, bro. His pension's
Yeah.
good, man.
Right. If
He's
that
good to
doesn't get
go.
you, if that doesn't get you at least one star, I
Right.
don't know. I don't know what we doing here.
Right, man.
If
He
that
he could
doesn't at
toss
least
out the
get you a star.
TSP ASAP after that kind of shit, bro. So he don't need no thrift savings plan after that, man. He don't need
Yeah,
no TSP.
but yeah, for the viewer, I'm interested to know how y'all feel about the character of War Machine, aka Colonel James Rhodes, aka Terrence Howard,